Welcome to the Vegas Insider channel here on YouTube as we start up the Daily Insider here on this Friday. Kevin Rogers with you, and hope you're having a good Friday as we get set for a very busy NBA playoff weekend. Also, you have the final play-in game tonight between the Warriors and the Grizzlies out in San Francisco, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Also, the Stanley Cup playoffs, they continue, so there is a lot going on, and Major League Baseball here on this Friday, the PGA Championship continuing, and just a lot going on and a lot to get to over the next little bit, next 30, 40 minutes or so. All right, so let's first let you know about the Daily Insider contest, which we have every single day, Monday through Friday, here on the Daily Insider. And what that is you put in the comments section below this video your Vegas Insider user ID along with your best bet for tonight. Now, it can be Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, it doesn't matter. But what we'll actually do here is we'll extend it into the Saturday and Sunday NBA games. Now, those only because they haven't started yet. So, if you want to put a play on Boston-Brooklyn, that's fine. If you want to put a play on the Clippers-Mavs, that's fine. So we will have that open for you, not only just the Friday games, but also the Saturday games and the Sunday games in the NBA as well. Just put down your best bet, first half, player prop. It doesn't matter. It can't be a live bet. That's the one thing it cannot be. And you will be in the drawing for a week's worth of handicapper picks on Vegas Insider. Just one handicapper of your choice. If you are the winner. Now you have to win your best bet. If you lose, then you're not eligible. But we need your user ID to get in contact with you. Now, if you don't have a user ID, that's fine too, because you can hit the big yellow register button here in the upper right corner. Free membership. Register now. It's free. Put in your information, ID, password, email address so we can get in contact with you, and you'll be all set with that. So let's begin, shall we, with everything that is going on, and just so much going on, in fact, which is really great. And let's first look at the NBA for tonight. And you have, well, actually, let's rewind back to last night. We'll look at last night's ridiculous game and then go to tonight. All right, so first, Washington beats Indiana 142-115. And this game actually was staying on the pace for an under, at least in the first half. But then in the second half, you see how it blew up where the two teams combined for 79 points in the third quarter. And Washington, who was up by 14 at the half, they totally blew it open in the second half. So now the Wizards, they advance. They'll take on Philadelphia on Sunday, and the Pacers are out. So the Pacers dropped 144 on the Hornets, then gave up 142 to Washington. And they lost all 4 games to the Wizards this season. All 4 of them went over the total, and they gave up a ridiculous amount of points to Indiana or to Washington in every single game. So I'm sure the NBA is happy that they have Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook still alive and not the Pacers. And it should be a pretty interesting series, the Wizards and the 76ers. They begin on Sunday in Philadelphia, and, you know, Washington could maybe steal a game or two, but I just don't think they have enough there against Philadelphia. And I don't know who's going to stop Joel Embiid in that series for Washington. But the Wizards, though, still a nice effort towards the end of the season to get back into the playoffs and finish as the 8th seed in the East. So now let's look ahead to tonight's action and the weekend action. Memphis and Golden State. That is the play-in game for the 8th seed in the Western Conference. The winner advances to take on the Utah Jazz Sunday. The loser goes home. And if Golden State loses, they just stay home. But the Warriors actually, I'm really curious about them tonight. Laying 4.5, total of 221. I'm curious about them for a couple reasons. One, everyone knows Golden State just beat Memphis last Sunday to close out the regular season to get into the 8-9 game. Now, Golden State had a golden opportunity to beat the Lakers. LeBron, AD, didn't do anything in the first half. Steph hit a couple big threes at the end of the half. And then the Lakers rallied back in the second half, and LeBron, the one-eyed bandit, he found a way to hit that three at the end over Steph Curry to help the Lakers beat the Warriors. Golden State did cover as an underdog. Now Golden State flipped back to a favorite. Memphis played very well against San Antonio. They had kind of a bad second quarter, but they did enough to win that game against the Spurs. And, I mean, the Spurs, only DeMar DeRozan can only do so much with that team. Memphis does have a lot of scoring options. They have Ja Morant. They have Dylan Brooks, who's really stepped up recently. Jonas Valanciunas, he has been terrific. He had a 20-20 game the other night against San Antonio, and he's just been a really good pickup for the Grizzlies since coming over from the Raptors and filling the middle. I mean, you don't get many big men left in the game anymore that make that kind of impact, and Valanciunas is doing that with Memphis. But even Jaren Jackson, he's back from the knee injury, and Memphis has a couple of the young guys that can step up and hit shots. But I do think that the Grizzlies have a shot here tonight. Now, does that mean that they're going to beat Golden State outright? I'm not saying that. I do look at the total, though, in this game. I do like the over in this one. And I know it's dropped. This total was 228 last Sunday when they played. Now it's down to 221. And they've gone under in every matchup. The first two in Memphis, Stephen Curry didn't play. He had that bruised tailbone that he suffered, and he didn't play in those two games. Andrew Wiggins had one big game against Memphis. The two teams split those games, and then Curry blew up against the Grizzlies this past week at 46 points in the win to get Golden State into that 8-9 spot, which gave them the luxury of losing one game to the Lakers and still having a home game to advance to the playoffs. Now, I'm sure the NBA would rather have Golden State than Memphis at this point in the postseason, and really they don't care if the Grizzlies are in or not, but they'd rather have Steph and the Warriors in. I'm just making that point. But just like they wanted the Lakers in, they would rather not see the Lakers get eliminated and see San Antonio in. So I do think it's going to be a very good game tonight. We've seen so far a lot of duds in this play-in tournament. Golden State Lakers was the only competitive game. I wouldn't call it a great game, but a competitive game. And I know Memphis San Antonio was a little bit ugly, but hopefully we can get a good game tonight between these two, and then that will complete the field for the NBA playoffs, since 15 of the 16 teams are now in, and now we'll see if Golden State finishes off Memphis. Tomorrow you have 4 games in the NBA. The Bucks and the Heat, they start things off, and that's a playoff rematch from last year. Kind of unfair to really blame Milwaukee for their quick exit against Miami last year. Giannis got hurt in that series. It was in the bubble in Orlando. Bucks didn't have home court advantage, and the bubble was a tough place last year. It really was. And understandably, the Lakers were the best team, and they won the whole thing. So you didn't have some crazy 8 seed winning the whole thing. I still don't think Miami was the best team out of the East. They beat Milwaukee and Boston, but if they had to go on the road to play those teams, I don't think they would have gotten to the NBA Finals. But Milwaukee laying just 4.5 here against Miami. Somebody did point out that Jimmy Butler didn't play in any of the games against Milwaukee this year. So that's something you got to factor in with the Heat, that they split the two in Miami really early in the season. Milwaukee destroyed them in the first game. Then Miami won the second game. It was one of the 2-game sets that we saw in the NBA this year. Then the Bucks just beat the Heat towards the end of the regular season in kind of a meaningless game. So that's where, and Jimmy Butler didn't play, so it's hard to really gauge what the Heat could do against the Bucks. Right now, I don't have a strong opinion on that game, but that's the 2:05 game to start things off at Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee. And then you have the Celtics and the Nets. We'll just go in rotation order here. Boston is a 7.5-point favorite against Brooklyn. The Nets will have their full arsenal of Kyrie Irving, of James Harden, and Kevin Durant. In the 3 victories the Nets had this season against the Celtics, the 3 of them were not together for any of the 3 games. Now, granted, the first game was on Christmas at TD Garden, and James Harden was still a member of the Houston Rockets, so that one you can't really count. But then the last 2 at Barclays Center, Harden didn't play in one of the games, and I believe he played in the other game, but Kevin Durant was hurt in one of those games. So you didn't have the three of them together for any of those three victories. And Brooklyn, in all three games, they were laying 3, 2.5, 3.5. Now you're laying 7.5. And you got to give the coaching edge here to Brad Stevens over Steve Nash. Steve Nash's first playoff game he's coaching. And yeah, Brooklyn's got more talent than Boston. I mean, that's pretty clear. Brooklyn's got more talent than a lot of other teams in the NBA. And Brooklyn could be in the NBA Finals. I do like the points here with the Celtics, though. Jason Tatum, we've shown what kind of player, or we've seen what kind of player he is. He scored 50 against Washington a few nights ago in the play-in tournament. And yes, there's no Jaylen Brown for Boston, which hurts, but you still have Kemba Walker. You still have Marcus Smart. You still have some other players there. See what if Tristan Thompson can score 10 points or so for the Celtics. Also, Evan Fournier, he's a wild card for the Celtics simply because I feel like he's had a lot of like 0 for 8s and 2 for 10s and some bad games, but you know he can have that one game he scores 20 points. He's more than capable of it. So that's another guy to keep an eye on for the Celtics. And with Brooklyn, obviously, you got to stop 3 of the best players on the planet. And look, I do think that Boston, at least in game 1, not could surprise them, but could keep it more competitive than people think. The Mavericks and the Clippers, that is the late afternoon game at Staples Center. Well, late afternoon on the East Coast. It's 1:35 on the West Coast. So interesting to see what happens there. And the Mavericks actually beat the Clippers. Remember that by 50 points way early in the season? That they just totally ripped up the LA Clippers. Kawhi didn't play that game. But LA, though, they ended up, when they went to Dallas earlier in the season, and LA's had Dallas's number. Remember, they beat them in the playoffs last year. Luka had that one game-winning 3. But this year, well, Dallas ended up taking 2 of 3 because the Clippers won that first. It was a back-to-back or 2 and 3 days matchup in Dallas. Clippers won the first game 109-99, and the Mavericks won the second game 105-89. But all 3 games finished under the total. Now, here are the totals for the 3 games this season. 227.5, 229, and 225.5. Tonight, or tomorrow rather, it's 219. So you're going lower than that in the 3 games, and really none of them came close. I mean, 109.99 on a 229 total, 105.89 on a 225.5 total. And that most recent game in Dallas, the Clippers were winning after the first quarter. Kawhi and Paul George still combined for 48 points. It's not like they were bad at all in that game, but Luka had 42. And the key with the Mavericks, obviously, is what Luka can do, and we've seen the heroics last year, but also Dallas didn't have to go to LA for any of those games. They were all in the bubble. So that will be a very interesting matchup with the Clippers laying 5. Portland and Denver. I do like Portland in this game tomorrow night. I look at Denver. They have the MVP, most likely MVP, in Nikola Jokic. No Jamal Murray, but still some good pieces around Jokic with Michael Porter Jr., with Aaron Gordon. But you say to yourself, who would you want if you were starting this series between Portland and Denver? You had the first choice. Would it be Nikola Jokic or would it be Damian Lillard? And Damian Lillard's proven a lot in the playoffs over the years. He's taken Portland to the Western Conference Finals. They lost a few years ago to Golden State. And last year, they got into the play-in game against Memphis, beat them, and then lost to the Lakers in the first round, eventual champion Lakers. And you still have 2 proven scorers with Lillard and C.J. McCollum. You have Carmelo Anthony. He's towards the end of his career, but Carmelo is good for lighting it up maybe once in the series. And here's my issue with Denver. I feel like it was smoke and mirrors a little bit with the Nuggets. You cannot take away what Jokic has done this year. His numbers are off the chart. He's going to be the MVP, okay? He's been fantastic. Can't take anything away from him. But also at the same time, Nuggets were down 3-1 to the Jazz last year in the bubble. Came back, won the final 3. Jamal Murray carried them. They were down 3-1 to that dysfunctional Clippers team. Same dysfunctional Clippers team this year, but or at least at the time they looked dysfunctional. And in several of those games, the Clippers were up big and the Nuggets came back in 5, 6, and 7 to win that series. Then they played the Lakers, lost in 5. So it was very easy to think that Denver could have been bounced in the first round last year, and we think that Denver is one of the elite teams in the West. They're very good. But Portland, though, I think Portland got their worst basketball out of the way in late February, early March, because they've won 7 of 10 on the road. And they're a very good road team. It wouldn't shock me at all if Portland won the series against Denver. It really wouldn't. But the Blazers getting 1 on the road. They lost twice to Denver earlier in the season. They beat Denver in the finale, but it really didn't matter. That one you kind of throw out. But I do like Portland in Game 1. Now, going to Sunday, and Atlanta, New York, the first matchup there in the rotation. New York went 3-0 against Atlanta this season. New York was an underdog in all 3 games. They're favored here. And the Knicks had the best ATS record in the league. They had a fantastic home record. Atlanta wasn't great on the road. But in 2 of the losses that Atlanta suffered against New York, the Hawks were winning in the fourth quarter, or going into the fourth quarter. And they dropped an overtime game at Madison Square Garden in which Trae Young suffered a sprained ankle. He was out for a few games. And the game in Atlanta was really a back-and-forth game early in the season. And the Knicks won the middle game by like 11 points or something. But Julius Randle had a couple big games against Atlanta. And look, the Knicks deserve to be in the playoffs. They're number 4 seed. They have home court advantage over Atlanta in this round. But with Trae Young, with John Collins, with Gallinari, with some of the shooters that the Hawks have, I mean, I do like Atlanta here in Game 1. Wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta won the series against New York. I really wouldn't. I mean, look, it's a toss-up. It's a 4-5. I mean, it's going to be a competitive series. But also, I just think that the Hawks here, after they were favored in every game against New York and they came pretty close to beating them 2 of 3 times, that there's some value in the Hawks in this game on Sunday night. Now, this line just came out. Philadelphia laying 7 to Washington, and that's the early game on Sunday. Wizards beating the Pacers last night, and now they face the 76ers. And Washington and Philadelphia, at least looking back, they played, I remember, in the opener, or played way early in the season. So it's going to be hard to, take a lot from some of the matchups between those 2 teams. But Philadelphia, the number 1 seed inside of the East, and Washington now, playing with some momentum after that win against Indiana. So Philadelphia went 3-0 against Washington this season. The Wizards covered actually both games in Philadelphia, but the Sixers won the matchup in D.C. by 26. And the first game was back in the opener, 113 to 107, a game that the 76ers had to rally back in. They were trailing going into the fourth quarter, and Joel Embiid ended up scoring 29 points in that game. Bradley Beal at 31, Westbrook at 21. He had a triple-double. I mean, he has a triple-double like every game. But for Washington, they didn't win any of those games this year against Philadelphia. They lost a 141-136 game in early January. That was a game that Bradley Beal had 60 against Philadelphia. I mean, 20 of 35 from the floor. He shot the ball pretty well and beat at 38 in that game. And look, they had a 92-point second quarter, those 2 teams. I mean, do you look at the over potentially because they can light it up? Out of the 3 games, 2 went under, 1 went over, and this is by far the lowest total out of the 3. The Lakers and the Suns is the 3:35 game on ABC on Saturday. Obviously, we're missing 1 game. It's whoever Utah's playing. On Sunday, I guess late Sunday night would be Utah and either Golden State or Memphis. So the Lakers and the Suns, this is so interesting from so many facets, this series. Number 1, the Lakers are favored in the series as a 7 seed. Number 2, when you look back at the matchups between these 2 teams this season, LeBron and Anthony Davis did not play together in any of the three matchups. In the first game in LA that the Suns won before the All-Star break, LeBron played, Anthony Davis didn't play. In the second game, this was right after LeBron sprained his ankle against the Hawks, game at Phoenix, LeBron and AD were both out, Suns blew out the Lakers. Then the third game, most recently at Staples, in which the Lakers were 6.5-point underdogs, Anthony Davis played, he scored over 40, but LeBron was out. So, and the Lakers ended up beating the Suns. So, Phoenix took 2 of 3 from LA, but we haven't seen LeBron and AD together against Phoenix. Now, there's a couple ways of looking at this game. Number one, the Lakers can't be any worse than they were against Golden State, at least early on. So they have to play better now they're a dog against Phoenix. But number two, though, I don't want to sleep on the Suns. I really don't. And for Chris Paul, he's gone through this so many times in the playoffs with New Orleans, with the Clippers, with Houston, with Oklahoma City, now with Phoenix. Amazing to see how many teams he's played for, but he's taken them all in the playoffs. He has taken them to the playoffs because Phoenix was not there last year. They had that great end to the bubble. They went 8-0, but they finished just short of the playoffs. And Chris Paul was with Oklahoma City at the time. And then he ends up going to Phoenix because the Thunder blew everything up. And he was like the missing piece. They needed that veteran presence, which he was. And Monty Williams, who's had success in New Orleans, head coach now at Phoenix, coach of the year. And you have a guy in Devin Booker. DeAndre Ayton's finally coming into his own. I'm not going to tell you right now the Suns are going to win the series, but I can see them winning game one. That this is kind of the statement game, and they know that they lose game one to the Lakers, they're in big trouble. But the Suns is a short favorite at home. Yeah, I'd take a look at them. Now let's take a look at Major League Baseball, and we'll look ahead to today's and tonight's action in Major League Baseball. All right, let's start. There's a lot of new series and some continuing series. All right, Mets and Marlins. Start things off. The Marlins back from a long road trip. They took 2 of 3 from the Phillies. Now they're back home to face the Mets. And Marcus Stroman, he struggled a bit in his last few starts, so you kind of wonder if he's worth a look tonight opposite Jordan Holloway, who we'll see how long he goes for the Marlins this evening. Milwaukee and Cincinnati. Brewers just lost 2 to the Royals, both as a heavy favorite, both with their best pitchers, with Brandon Woodruff and with Corbin Burns. And Cincinnati was totally humiliated by San Francisco, capped off by a 19-4 loss yesterday. So you say, okay, who do you go with? I mean, both these teams have been, in poor form of late. But Adrian Hauser has good road numbers. The Reds are 0-3 in Jeff Hoffman's last 3 home starts. I just don't want to trust Cincinnati. I really don't. I'm not saying Milwaukee's any kind of prom queen, but I just don't want to. I really don't want to trust the Reds right now with the way they're playing. That Cincinnati had that hot start, and ever since then they've totally tapered off. It's a battle of Andersons in Atlanta, Tyler and Ian, as the Pirates face the Braves. Pittsburgh won the opener in extra innings last night, so good job by them. Tyler Anderson's pitched well for the Pirates this season, and Ian Anderson, he as well as look, the Atlanta rotation has been very shaky, and understandably, they don't have Mike Soroka. They don't have now Yanoa after he broke his hand punching the dugout bench. Max Fried has not been as good as he was last year. So Atlanta, look, they've had their issues. They really have. And Charlie Morton struggled after coming over in the offseason from the Rays. But Ian Anderson so far 3-1 on the season, and they've only lost 2 of his starts out of 8 so far. So that's not bad for Ian Anderson. He's a heavy favorite. Tyler Anderson, hey, ERA of 3.5, and the Pirates have won 5 of his past 6 starts. That's pretty strong. And the last 2 as an underdog. He has a couple nice underdog wins against the Cubs and the Padres this year. So Pittsburgh, I mean, look, why not take a shot with them again? How do you trust Atlanta at this point? Atlanta is so all over the map right now, that team. Cubs and the Cardinals, they face off for the first time this season, those two old rivals. Kyle Hendricks and Carlos Martinez. Martinez is back after he suffered a sprained ankle a few starts ago. He's pitched better since coming back, or he had a tough start to the season and pitched a few good starts, and then he got hurt. Kyle Hendricks, the one thing you're looking for him is some kind of consistency. And he's coming off a really good start at Detroit last time out. Now let's see what he can do against St. Louis. This time out, he's a short favorite on the road. Arizona's at Colorado. Seth Frankoff and German Marquez on the mound. Arizona's got swept at LA. They're just happy to not play the Dodgers. And now Colorado, I mean, look, the Rockies, they've been a horrible road team on the season, but at home they've been respectable. 13-12 for Colorado at Coors. They're 2-17 on the road. So them at least coming back home, they should be pretty happy considering they were just swept by the Padres. They scored a grand total of 1 run in those 3 games. So both teams just got swept. LA scored 6 runs in their series at LA in those 4 games. So so both those teams in desperate need of busting out tonight. Speaking of the Dodgers, they faced the Giants for the first time this season. The Dodgers are 0-5 in Trevor Bauer's last 5 road starts, which is unbelievable. And the guy, for the $40 million a year he's making, 2.20 ERA, he's put up really good numbers. He has 77 strikeouts on the campaign, had 10 against the Marlins his last time out. But the Dodgers haven't won a road start made by Trevor Bauer since the opener, his opening start against Colorado. That's crazy. It is. And again, a lot of those losses not his fault. They've lost some of them in extra innings, some in late innings. And San Francisco has Alex Wood on the mound. Giants playing well. Top team in the NL West right now. Top team by 2 games over the LA Dodgers. The White Sox and Yankees meet up in New York as we shift to the American League. And White Sox have fared well against left-handed pitching this year, 9-2. Carlos Rodon off of his worst start of the season against the Royals, and Jordan Montgomery, he goes for New York. He's another guy trying to find some consistency. The White Sox, look, everyone's gonna focus on that stat against what they do against left-handed pitching. You can't deny that, but the Yankees, at least, they are coming off a series win at Texas. They had the Corey Kluber no-hitter, and they've won 3 in a row. Minnesota's at Cleveland, and the Twins split a pair of games at LA against the Angels yesterday. So they went from Minnesota to LA, now back to Cleveland. And Randy Dobnak goes for the Twins, Tristan McKenzie for Cleveland. Indians a little short of a favorite here, or this one seems a little too short for my taste, considering the Twins have been horrible. And Cleveland is coming off of a series victory against the Angels. Now, granted, Mike Trout didn't play in those final 2 games, but they finished off their road trip in pretty good style, and Cleveland's actually been they play better at home. They're 10-7, but they swept the Cubs in their last home series. Tampa Bay and Toronto, Tyler Glasnow, a nice favorite against Anthony Kay, and for Tampa Bay, they're making like a bus trip to Dunedin. They're not going very far there. That's their first time playing the Blue Jays or on the road. They faced him earlier in the season at Tropicana Field, but Tyler Glasnow, nice favorite there against Toronto, and the Blue Jays off a tough loss to the Red Sox last night. And the Blue Jays blew that game late against the Red Sox, but Toronto's still above 500. Tampa Bay at 25-19 so far on the campaign, and the Blue Jays have lost 2 straight. And look, Tampa Bay, they're getting it together. 7 straight wins all of a sudden. They had the 2 clunkers against the Yankees at home, and they've won 7 in a row now. They swept Baltimore. Houston's at Texas. Tyler Ivey making his Major League debut. He's from Texas originally, and works out for him that he gets to make his debut. He didn't grow up far from Arlington. Kyle Gibson, who's had tremendous numbers this season, but he lost to the Astros his last time out, and Houston is short favorite. Houston took 2 of 3 from Oakland, and the Rangers dropped the 3 to the Yankees, and they got shut out in the last 2 games. So I don't have a lot of faith in the Rangers there. The Royals looking to avenge a sweep at the hands of the Tigers in Detroit. Now they play each other again in Kansas City for the first time this season. Mike Minor and Jose Urena on the mound, and Detroit off of a 3-game sweep of Seattle. And they had the no-hitter, too. Everyone's got no-hitters. And Mike Minor goes, he's a heavy favorite there. Kansas City playing with some confidence after they took 2 from Milwaukee. Angels and A's in Anaheim. And we'll see what Jose Quintana can do tonight for L.A. And the Angels, they snapped their mini losing streak against Minnesota yesterday, but they also lost to the Twins in the second game of the doubleheader. And Oakland looking to get back on track after they dropped 2 to Houston. But the Angels right now, they are a short favorite at home in spite of being under 500. And it's been a little up and down for Oakland since that 13-game winning streak. And the Angels just really haven't been very good of late. But one note here on the Halos. Looking back at what they've done, they've won 3 consecutive home openers, if that means anything to you. In interleague play, Baltimore and Washington, the Beltway series, there, Steven Strasburg back in the mound laying 200. Seems a little expensive for a guy that can leave in the first inning against Jorge Lopez. And Baltimore just swept by Tampa Bay at home, so keep an eye on that. I always like those teams. You have 2 situations tonight of heavy underdogs that got swept at home than going on the road. And Baltimore and Seattle are both in that situation. The Orioles, they've been better on the road than at home. And that's one thing to keep an eye on with them. And the Nationals, they return home from a long road trip. So we'll see what they do. Boston and Philadelphia, Martin Perez and Aaron Nola. Nola's undefeated at home this year, 4-0. That's what the Phillies' record is with him on the mound. He's lost his last 2 starts. Perez has actually been decent. But we'll see what the Phillies do after they struggled the last 2 games against the Marlins. And Seattle and San Diego wrap up the night. As I mentioned, the Mariners, who were embarrassed by Detroit in that series at home, got no hit in the second game. Chris Flexen's actually been a decent pitcher for the Mariners this year. Chris Paddock, the problem with him is I don't know how far he's going to go in this game. San Diego still has a pretty good bullpen. They're coming off a sweep of the Rockies. I mean, look at Seattle. They could be worth a shot here. I mean, everyone's so down on them. And I don't mind going in on down teams as heavy dogs. It's one thing if you're down and you're plus 110, but if you're down at this kind of price where everyone's high on San Diego and down on Seattle, maybe the Mariners are worth a look. They really are. Now let's go to the NHL, and let's take a look at last night's games, and then we'll take a quick look at tonight. And 4 games inside of the NHL. From last night, a wild game in Tampa. The Panthers beat the Lightning 6-5. You see the Marlins. The Panthers were up 2-0, and Tampa Bay scored 5 in the second. They go up 5-3 going to the third. Sergei Bobrovsky came in for Chris Driedger in goal, and then the Panthers scored 2 to tie it. Then Ryan Lomberg scored the winning goal in overtime, and the Panthers beat the Lightning to get back in that series 6-5 was the final, and Sergei Bobrovsky will probably start Game 4 tomorrow for the Panthers, just because you got to go back to him. He played well in the third and in overtime. The Penguins hold off the Islanders 5-4, so Pittsburgh up 2-1 in that series. So nice over there, a couple overs last night in the NHL. You had an over in Minnesota as the Golden Knights beat the Wild 5-2. Minnesota's up 2-0 after 1. Then it was all Vegas after that. So Vegas now, after losing the first game in overtime to Minnesota, they're up 2-1 in that series. Montreal shocks Toronto 2-1. Now, the Maple Leafs will likely be without John Tavares for a little while. And if you missed this, he collided with Corey Perry of the Canadiens, and Tavares couldn't move on the ice. And they brought him off on a stretcher. He gave the old thumbs up. But I got to think that he's done for a little bit, and that's a big blow for Toronto to lose him. But we'll see what the Canadiens do moving forward. And wouldn't that be something? Toronto was the odds-on favorite to win or to get out of the North, as from they won the division, but the odds-on favorite to get out of the North and advance to the quote-unquote Final Four this year in the NHL. But they still have Austin Matthews. They still have stars in the Maple Leafs, but it'll be interesting to see what they do moving forward. Now, let's take a look quickly at tonight's games in the NHL. You have 4 of them. Washington, Boston. Bruins up 2-1 in that series. All 3 games have gone to overtime. So, I don't know if you want to take a shot with Washington maybe tonight. Carolina's at Nashville. Hurricanes up 2-0 in that series. And it's been pretty much all Carolina. and there's a major class difference between those two teams. So Carolina needs 2 more wins, and they'll face either the Lightning or Panthers in the next round. Winnipeg and Edmonton, Jets up 1-0 in that series, game 2 tonight. Hey, the Oilers had a meltdown last year in the playoffs against Chicago. We'll see if that happens again against Winnipeg. Colorado's at St. Louis, and it's just out of control what that price is. Look at that, over 200. Colorado's laying on the road. And the Avalanche up 2-0 over the Blues in that series. That one will probably end soon as well, and Colorado will wait for potentially Vegas, and you'll get a really good series there in the West between the Avalanche and the Golden Knights, assuming that Colorado finishes off St. Louis and the Golden Knights can finish off Minnesota. So we'll see how those go. Don't forget, you can purchase Handicapper picks on VegasInsider.com. Go to our NBA page. Go to our NHL page, our Major League Baseball, buy picks. They're all separate, obviously, for the sports. But you can purchase picks from our handicappers at VegasInsider.com. And once you get there, it's $29.95 for a daily package for one handicapper. And the guaranteed pick is $39.95, and what that is, it's one selection, a best bet from each handicapper. So you purchase one, it's $39.95. You don't get charged for it if you lose. If you win, you get charged for it. But if you lose, you don't get charged for it, which is the best part about it. So pay after it wins, $39.95 per handicapper, and you see the selections available. So tying it back to the Daily Insider contest, which we talked about at the beginning, that you get 1 week's worth of one handicapper selections on Vegas Insider for free, which is a $100 value if you are the winner of the Daily Insider contest. And what that means is, or how to participate, you give us in the comments section below your user ID for Vegas Insider and your best bet for the night for Friday, or I've extended this to Saturday and Sunday for the NBA only, since we already know the matchups. If you have a first half play in one of the NBA games, player prop, that's fine. So we extend that into Saturday and Sunday. But you can also do tonight's NBA game or baseball or hockey. That's fine too. And if you don't have a user ID, then you hit the yellow register button in the upper right-hand corner, and you go through the steps to create your user ID and password. It's free, and put your information there, your email address and your name and your phone number, so our marketing team can get in touch with you if you are the winner. So you need to win your best bet, number one, be a subscriber to our YouTube channel as well, and give us your user ID, because if we don't have your user ID, we can't contact you. And you will be in the drawing for the prize, which is a week's worth of handicapper picks at VegasInsider.com for one handicapper of your choosing. All right, so with all that being said, we appreciate you watching the Daily Insider here on Vegas Insider for Friday, May 21st. I am Kevin Rogers. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, best of luck with your bets.